Word around the street is that the Octatrack is the Digitakt's elder sibling, a more capable, a more functional, a much wider hunk of metal. Is it true? Well, I don't know yet. I've only had it for a couple of weeks, but I do want to walk you through my beatmaking process on the Octatrack to talk a little bit about how it differs from the Digitakt and kind of talk about what sort of tools I use on the Octatrack that are not available on the Digitakt and how that kind of changes the way I approach my sampling and beatmaking workflow. Before we dive in, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid, as you may know, is a digital music distribution platform, and it's what I use to get my music onto Spotify and Apple Music and all the other streaming services that I use. I want to talk about one of DistroKid's features that I actually just learned about recently, called splits. Splits is a feature that allows collaborators to split earnings from a song or even a whole album on DistroKid. Once the feature has been set up, DistroKid automatically distributes the earnings to the individual collaborators without any further action. You can add unlimited collaborators and they can be added or removed at any time. The interface is also super straightforward and simple, so even a drummer can set it up. You just enter the collaborator information and the corresponding percentage of their share that you want to go to them. And for privacy's sake, only each individual collaborator is able to see the percentage of their own split. I think that splits is a super cool feature, one of those things that's seemingly really obvious that I didn't even know existed. And it's definitely a tool that I'm going to use in the future for collaborations. So again, I want to thank DistroKid for sponsoring this video, and I'm going to be talking about some of their other unique platform features in future videos this month, so definitely keep an eye out for those. And don't forget, you can get 7% off of your first year of membership at DistroKid using the link in the description of this video, so go check it out. So, the Octatrack. I'm going to approach this video by doing a beat breakdown of this jam, and I'll play a little bit of it for you before we get started. But definitely go listen to the whole tune if you want the full context. So I just wanted to show you those three patterns that kind of create the build of the song. And let's start at the start. You know, I tend to start with percussion, but I'm going to start with the melody because melody's just kind of more fun sometimes. So let's talk about the guitar sample and let's talk about Big Digitakt, because a lot of people say the Octatrack is Big Digitakt with a CROSSFADER and slicing. And to be honest, you know, the Octatrack is so much more than this, but I really tried to approach this song from that angle because the Octatrack is so complicated and I'm trying to just get to know each individual part of it as best as I can before kind of moving on to the next thing. Because I eventually want to use it for sort of a, you know, like a live remixer and running my Digitakt and Digitone and doing some like resampling and playing my guitar through it too. So yeah, let's listen to the guitar part. So it's a cool, choppy little sample. I basically just played a few chords rhythmically, and then I, as you can see, made slices and then spread them across the 64 steps of the pattern. So you can listen to some of the individual slices. And you can hear that you're just getting some different artifacts and tones from within each chord that I've played for each bar of the pattern, which is really cool. And slicing is really sick. I've never actually played with slicing before. The Digitakt can't do it in a traditional way. I have a video where I talk about slicing up a sample to kind of use longer passages of, but using slicing in a rhythmic way like this is something that I feel like is very like flagship in a lot of styles of music, and it's super fun that I'm actually able to do it now with a piece of hardware. So yeah, super fun guitar part. I really enjoyed coming up with that. And let's take a listen to the only other melodic component really. And mute the guitar. So this is a sample from Blank Form's newest sample pack, which obviously I got because I'm obsessed with all of those sounds. The sample pack is called Beats 2, and the sample is pretty straightforward. It's just a very long, swelling kind of like twinkly bell pad. And I put, a filter on it. And for the LFO, I have my typical sidechain effect that I do, as you can see, just an inverse exponential wave. And the setup is a little bit different from the Digitakt because each wave shape has like an inverse and a standard form. It doesn't have like a negative knob for the depth. It starts at 0. So that's something to be aware of. So yeah, it gives you this pumping sound to go along with the kick. So let's talk about the kick. It's a kick that I've sound locked. So I got this normal kick sound and then these cool ratchety sounds that occur in different places. And to sound lock on the Octatrack, all you do is you hold the key and then you press down. You press the down arrow. It's not in the source page like it is in the Digitakt. So, there's a lot of similar functionality, but some of the things are just in slightly different places. So it was a bit of a challenge kind of reminding myself that sometimes I do just have to read the funny manual. Anyways, the kick part's really simple. And again, I just have the that synth side chained to the kick. And then for the snare, I did a similar type of thing with sound locks. So I have this little like ratchety sound. And the snare part's super simple. So like similar to the Digitonne, where it's really beneficial to take advantage of the sound locks because there are only 4 tracks. The Octatrack can utilize the tracks for different functions rather than just playing back samples. So I think it really sort of behooves you to indeed take advantage of using one track to fulfill multiple purposes. So like you could put all of your percussion on just a couple of tracks if you wanted to, and then cleverly use muting to bring them in and out if you don't want to have full control over each and every percussion element, at least in terms of muting, because you get all the parameter locking goodness that you'd expect from Elektron. So it's really not hard to do that within a couple of tracks. And then on 6, we just have a growly bass. And our clicky clacky hi-hats on track 5. So that's the idea of the first pattern. I didn't use track 3 because I have it set up as a through machine because that's just where I decided to record the guitar part. And then I had it sent to track 4 just because I was teaching myself some of the routing, but I'll get into that in a later video perhaps. I just want to talk about like the actual beat making process and my thoughts behind that for today. So yeah, I'm really only using 6 tracks here because I have track 8 set up as a master track. So this is something that also varies from the Digitakt, is that there's a master page where the compressor lives and sort of the mixing and all of that. But since a lot of the inputs are set to individual tracks of the Octatrack, all of those levels are set individually. And unfortunately, there's not like a master compressor or anything like that. You have to set track 8 up as a master track and then select the compressor as one of the effects. So each track has 2 assignable effects. So I think what I'm going to tend to do is, use track 8 as that master track because I love to use the compressor. I think that at least in the Digitakt, that compressor is like super squishy and I really love the sound of it. I'm trying to coax similar sounds out of the Octatrack as I do the Digitakt compressor, and I'm learning a little bit. So we'll see how it goes in terms of sound quality. So yeah, so far, not too much different from the Digitakt in terms of like beat workflow and things like that, aside from the little mundane things. But what's this? This is a CROSSFADER. And what the CROSSFADER enables you to do, as you may or may not know, is set up scenes where you can change the values of pretty much any parameter that you can parameter lock. And this is another reason why it's great to set up a master track with the Octatrack, because you can set up an effect or a filter or something to take over the whole thing. So I have a few different scenes set up here that I used in the performance. That one is clearly a very intense sort of like bit crushed. It's called the lo-fi effect. So it has bit reduction, sample rate reduction, and a couple of these other settings that kind of like act like a weird fading in and out, almost kind of like an arrhythmic tremolo effect. And to be honest, I haven't looked up what all of these actually do in the manual. I'm just kind of like listening and playing around with them. So yeah, I have a scene set up for that. So I can do these like little rhythmic drops. Shout out Raised Ranch. That is like an effect that they use all the time in their pieces, and I just think it sounds so cool, so I had to steal that for this one. And then you can also set the scenes to control individual parameters on each of the tracks. So what I've done with the delay for one of the scenes that I use in the beginning as I'm sort of building up the pattern, you can see that I've increased the delay. So you can have these cool like just these little kind of like tricky turnaround things. And this is something that I'm really, really loving about the Octatrack. And it's something that like you could do with the Digitakt, right? But I really think the extent to which you can do so is a bit limited, and it involves heavy programming of like fills and trig conditions and lots of clever, tricky muting and unmuting and maybe reloading patterns, which is so cool. And I've seen a lot of people do some really crafty, quick stuff, but I think it's a little bit more fun to be able to program it on the front end and then use it performatively in a way that's intended with this little effects lever, this slider of joy, this stupid piece of plastic. So yeah, that's the first pattern. And then the second pattern is just a little variation of that. I amped up the hat sound a little bit. So another weird thing about the Octatrack is that your previews for the sounds are 9 through 16, corresponding with track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And depending on this sort of trig mode, which you set up by holding function and hitting the down arrow, you can, access different components. So like I should have put this earlier. So for this guitar sound, I can access my slices once I've created them by using function and down to go into the slice menu. And you can choose in a slice grid how many different slices you want to break down the sample into. And I chose 64 here. And you can also play them chromatically, and that's just playing that first slice slot. So yeah, I just changed up some of the sounds to, change the progression for a B part, which is, just a simple enough way to continue that structure of a song. And I believe, yep, I kept the guitar part the exact same, and I ramped up that kick and snare pattern a bit. You can hear it's a bit more laid back in pattern 1, and kind of doubles down in pattern 2. And all of my scenes are the same. One additional important thing to know about the Octatrack is that the mutes are not available to set per pattern. They're only available globally. And I've heard that there are ways around this using the song arranger mode, but that's something I haven't jumped into yet. Another interesting thing is that you can turn a mute on, and it does not pick up or drop off with trigs, as does the Digitakt. It basically is acting more like an audio mute rather than a trig mute. So like with the Digitakt, if you're playing a track and there's a sound that occurs on the downbeat of every pattern, if that pattern starts while the track is muted and you immediately unmute the track, you won't hear it until the pattern cycles again and that trig is trigged. But with the Octatrack, if you unmute after a sound has started, it just lets the audio through, which can be cool. It's totally user preference, I guess, and there's some utility to either of those methods, so it's just something that you have to work with. Another point to drive home the fact that the Octatrack is just like a weird, unique beast and doesn't really play by anybody's rules. And some people love that, and some people hate that. So one thing that I want to talk about that I didn't realize was a thing is that you can preset scenes for patterns, and maybe this actually has to do with individual parts, but which I'll talk about in a second. I'll go over parts because they're a lot, I think, more simple than people give them credit for. They're kind of weird and arbitrary, but they're really easy to use. This thing is so hard to talk about because there's like so much going on all at once. So I hope you're following, and please let me know if you have any questions about anything I'm talking about. I would love to kind of chat about it and answer to the best of my ability at this point. So in pattern 3, where it really opens up, I have a bunch of filters set up in the scenes. And again, you can check out the full track to hear how I play around with those. But I do a drop from pattern 2 to pattern 3 that goes like this. And remember, scene 12 is that low pass filter that I have set up. And scene 9 is this bit crush thing. So I can slide from that bit crush, get a little bit of that bit crush on the tail of the end of pattern 2, and then right when it jumps into pattern 3, it remembers the scene that I had selected, which was scene 13 with that low pass filter. So it has independent scene memory for each of the patterns. And it could be that the independent scene memory is for parts and not patterns. I'd have to read the funny manual to confirm that for myself. But I think it's a really cool feature because it's not like, you know, if you have track 4 selected and you jump to pattern 2, you're still going to have track 4 selected. Weird example, but it's really cool because you can set up like drastic changes between the scenes and then just save to which one you want it to jump to on a new pattern. So let's talk about parts for a second, because parts are an integral part of what the Octatrack does, but it might not be super clear why they exist, because, you know, you have like a project with banks and patterns. That's kind of like general language in the Elektron realm these days. But parts are different. Parts contain information about which machines are placed on each track. And on the Octatrack, in case you're not aware, a machine is what the track does. There are multiple types of machines, and they all have names, which is frustrating because they have really simple functions. Static and flex machines both play back samples. Static plays them back from the compact flash card, whereas flex machines plays it back from the RAM. And flex machines are also used for sampling, so they're like tied to the recording buffers. Through machines pass through audio. So if you have an external source, you use a through machine and you can just affect the audio and sequence effects and things like that. It's a through machine. Neighbor machines can kind of act as an additional set of effects for any, you know, preceding machine on it. So if you have a flex machine playing samples and you want 2 more effects, you can use a neighbor machine to add effects. And a pickup machine is used for looping. Haven't explored that yet, but that's basically like if you want to do live looping and overdubbing in real time. So each of those machines is assignable to each of the 8 tracks. And the part contains information about the machine. So you can have part 1 on pattern 1 with all flex machines. And then if you wanted to use all static machines on pattern 2, you would have to use a different part because part 1 is already associated with all of those machines. I think there's cool functionality there. I wish that parts didn't exist and you could just do that per pattern, but I'm sure there's something to do with the memory structure. People say, so, you know, if you like edit a sound or like an effect, because that's another thing, effects are tied to parts. If you edit an effect on one part, you don't have to go back to every other pattern and change that effect. But I would almost rather do that and have the flexibility to kind of use more than 4 configurations of machines and effects, especially when you're using a master track. That said, I never really use more than like 4 variations on a theme when I'm building out a song. So I really don't think it's going to be a big deal at all. Maybe for some people, but that's a lot of different configurations to have. And it's super easy if you want to like copy a part over, but use different effects. You just go to part, and then you hit function and copy to copy it, and then you go to the pattern and then paste the pattern if you want to, you know, have all the same pattern information. And then when you're in the parts menu, that, you know, say you've already copied part 2, you just go highlight part 3, function, and paste, and it will paste the part you have copied to the part you have selected. Ooh, okay, I've been talking a lot, and I'm hoping that you're absorbing some of this information if it is new to you, and maybe it's a refresher, maybe you're just kind of like going through tutorials to help yourself learn the machine like I did, but it has sincerely been a blast. I already have like 2 kind of finished-ish tracks. This is one of them, and then I have another project that I'm also using a lot of guitar with. And it's really cool to be able to kind of implement my Midwest emo guitar roots into some of my electronic music. It's kind of what I've been wanting all along. And I was doing some of that stuff with the OP1, but I have to say the Octatrack is kind of like a perfect combination between the OP1 and the Digitakt. It's like the OP1 Pro in some ways, in terms of how I sort of put the OP1 on a pedestal for being able to do lots of live effects and tweaking and using the blue knob and assigning, you know, those memory slots. That's one of my favorite things about performing with the OP1. And a Digitakt can do that in a way that is just like to the next level in terms of how you can sort of like save different configurations of those effects and really use it to add energy to a performance. So needless to say, I'm excited to keep playing around with this. And as folks always say, I've really only scratched the surface here. I'm only using 6 tracks. I'm using it like big Digitakt with scenes and slicing, which is like super cool in its own right. And you know, when I heard that sort of comparison made, I was like, that's not worth it to me. Like the Digitakt is going to be good enough. But then I watched a lot of videos about some of the live remixing capabilities and was like, this thing can do a lot. Let me teach it to myself foundationally first as big Digitakt with a CROSSFADER and slicing. And let's see where I can go from there. And to be honest, I think I'm going to spend more time than I initially thought I would in this sort of context. Let me know down in the comments what kind of Octatrack content you would like to see, and generally what other type of content you want to see. I have a lot of fun doing pretty much everything for the channel, to be honest. So even though I'm going to personally be spending a lot of time with the Octatrack and kind of making a lot of music on that, I'd love to show you my process. But if you're more interested in things like tricks with the Digitakt or sound design on the Digitone, let me know, because I still love playing with those instruments and talking about that kind of stuff too. Also, I'm still looking for more students to teach lessons to. I'm doing Digitakt, Digitone, OP1, basic modular, general synth consultation, and maybe even some beginner Octatrack stuff if that's something you're interested in. So yeah, find me on Instagram @slowhaste and shoot me a message over there if you are interested. I'm gonna make a form for you all sometime soon, something that you can fill out if you're interested as well, to kind of structure it out a little bit more. But for now, just shoot me a message and we can start chatting there. So yeah, thanks so much to my patrons. Thank you so much to DistroKid for sponsoring this video. Check them out. And if you're looking to pick up an Octatrack or another Elektron device, go check out the links in the description of this video for my perfect circuit links. I do get a small commission off of those, which is super awesome because it doesn't cost any more for you, and it helps to go directly toward the channel. Everything that I make on the channel, I do reinvest directly back into the channel, just because I want to make it the best for y'all that I can. It's so much fun making this, and we're almost at 3,000 subscribers, which is super cool. And I've almost been doing this for a year now. So this is kind of like the year anniversary of my How I Make Beats video with the Digitakt, which was like 35 minutes of me rambling incoherently. And for some reason, people decided they wanted to watch it. So I guess this is kind of a cool return to form for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.